Dr. Grube give his talk since we heard about the repair, and he's a little bit pumped up to come back with replacement. Dr. Grube, spotlight lecture. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being here, all the way from Germany.
Thank you very much, Rox. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I am fired up. I just had the ICI meeting in Tel Aviv, and there was a whole session on COAPT and MitraFR, and 5 different people were discussing more or less emotionally of what's happening. Basically, I was asked by Dr. Sharma to give my view on the COAPT and the MitraFR very briefly before I switch to the replacement. And I have to say, you know, before anything, I have to congratulate actually both the French investigators and also, of course, Greg Stone as the leading PI and all the centers. However, I believe, and there's a third one yet coming, the Reshape trial. So I honestly believe that this trial was a blessing, or is a blessing, but at the same time it might actually be a curse. And I will tell you in a minute why that is. This is the conflict slide. And let me give you a little bit of a background of what I'm supposed to be talking about. And I would like to start with a slide from Dr. Leon. I bought from Dr. Leon. I think he's very, very right in saying that MR disease prevalence data are deceptive. Most patients with primary MR are better served with definitive surgical repair, and patients with secondary MR are often best treated with optimal or guideline-directed medical therapy. The true MR population who would be justifiable candidates for interventional therapies is yet unknown. And I think that is very true even after COAPT. And if we look at the treatment option 2017 or earlier even, we know we have primary, secondary, and basically it is a surgical approach, repair and replacement, and then the medical therapy and the MitraClip. Now the clip obviously is a big thing. And if we look at the treatment option, percutaneous or transcatheter treatment options, probably not one single device will resolve the problem that we're having, and it is probably a toolbox, so multiple approaches are required to treat this complex and heterogeneous disease. So I was asked to give a few ideas about the MitraClip, and yes, I said this 4 years ago when Saibal and I discussed the MitraClip, the value of the MitraClip. And I still insist that it is a little bit too easy to think that by reducing the orifice you're resolving a problem. I cannot, won't, and it is no discussion about these tremendous results and the impact that this treatment option has in the future. So, and this is a reflection of what we have, mitral repair devices in use, and you can see on the left, the MitraClip has the most numbers, followed by the Carillon Cardioband. Mitraline is most likely on retreat, and then the Pascal, and whatever follows later. So we know those two, and you've all seen this in the New England Journal of Medicine, and the New England Journal, as you well know, a very, if not one of the most respected journals, accepted both trials, knowing the differences independent of France and America and maybe Germany or Asia. They like these controversies, and that is certainly a controversial situation that we have here from France and from the United States. This is what I really like from Michael Mack. I really like that slide. Is COAPT a rising tide that floats all boats, or will it float only one boat? And I think we have to look at this a little bit more carefully. And it is my personal opinion that we are having this now with TMVR at the horizon. I'm not saying that TMVR is here as of now, but it is on the horizon. In patients suitable for TMVR, only clips with the perfect results should be left. And that applies also for the first clip of a procedure. And this is probably the blessing that we have a device, but deciding for a clip, you have to remember that you make a very serious decision for a patient. Because once you place a clip, no other options except surgery remains, maybe except for annuloplasty approach percutaneously, but that might not actually solve the problem. So before you do that, and you have an option, I think it's important that you realize the clip is a definitive situation unless Abbott, Edwards, or some other come up and take the bridge out again. So what did we learn? MitraClip is safe, and MitraClip reduces MR in this patient population. I think this is not controversial. Patient selection and timing, however, is a key. Remember, this is a study, and everybody that enrolled in COAPT, maybe as opposed to the French trial, there was a ratio of 10-1 included in the COAPT trial. So you have to submit 10 patients, and 1 was selected. So it is a very highly selected group of patients. Let's not forget that. We come to that in the real-world situation. COAPT confirms synergy of drug and device therapies in heart failure patients. I think that's a very, very important thing. It's the first, as Saibal pointed out, a very, very important remark here that we have a device for the first time that decreases mortality, rehospitalization for heart failure. Very important. Competent centers are needed to ensure proper implantation expertise and appropriate heart failure treatment before, during, and after the procedure. And the results of COAPT are not easily generalizable to the whole spectrum of MR therapies. This is what I call real world, and there was a discussion, what exactly is real world? Well, TVT is real world, and you can see here what the real world is. 40% with post-procedural MR more than 2 are left at home, and this is not France, this is not Germany, this is the United States. And what that means in terms of mortality, you can see here from Paul Siraj, published that and discussed if you leave a patient that is not being treated well with the clip, then you have a mortality increase. So make sure that once you do the clip, that the result is really good. What do we still need to know? How do we better implement heart team surgeons and cardiologists together? How do we more precisely standardize the procedure? What are effects based on post-clip gradient and MVA? What is optimal medical management? Exactly, does this work or not work for other MV repairs therapy? And what is the mitral world after COAPT? Obviously, there's increased optimism with mitral valve therapies. Trial recruitment for other devices will become problematic and more difficult. If the clip becomes standard of care, it might become comparative for other mitral innovations. Heart failure specialists are now more actively involved. Safety of the clip procedure will be difficult to match. The results of the COAPT trial are difficult to replicate in all patients. I think more devices are actually needed. Surgery remains an option for DMR in younger patients and more complex anatomies. Having said that, this is not a criticism. This is by all means only some remarks that I would like to caution when we look at COAPT. COAPT is not a salvage and not a blessing for everything. It is a very, if not one of the most important heart failure trials in history, if not certainly in the past. And I absolutely agree with Saibal that this is a very, very important trial, and all of the enrollers and the investigators have to be congratulated. But we also have to look at the real world, and we'll see how this replicates and how this mirrors in those patients. If everybody gets a clip with a bad result, I don't think we have gained a lot. So we move on to mitral valve therapy and the potential advantages of the replacement versus repair are summarized here. I think it is quite obvious we don't need to do that, but I would like to see why actually TMVR is still something that we need. And if we look on the left side, you see the rationale, and on the right side, you see the evidence. On the rationale side, TMVR is aortic agnostic, with FMR being the larger unmet need, 80-20 split today. On the right side, you see the operated, non-operated patients in functional and in primary mitral regurgitation. Second, evidence shows high recurrent MR with surgical repair for ischemic MR patients. 59% of the patients who underwent surgical repair had recurrent MR at 2 years, and I think we have seen this. And thirdly, TMV repair that leaves residual MR has a high mortality penalty. Current transcatheter repair technologies are leaving residual MR in a large group of patients, the clip and the cardioband, and also 46% mortality at 1 year for New York Heart Association class 3 and 4 FMR patients with discharge more than +3. So it is a difficult situation. Obviously, there are challenges if we look at the mitral valve repair, technical and anatomical challenges are summarized here. I've seen, you know, all of these are very important, very difficult to deal with on a transcatheter path. The design targets are also clear for a percutaneous valve. It should anchor, it should seal, it should avoid interference, it should be adaptable, it should ideally be recapturable, durable, and of course, it should be user-friendly. If we look at the timeline, it makes us obvious, very clear, that it took a long time to come along. 2012, Cardiac Q first generation was approved. 2014, 5 valves were approved. 2015, 2 next generation Cardiac Q and the Navigate, and then in 2016, Carson and Highlife. So it's been from 2012 into 2016 where we have this handful of devices. And this is the human experience. And as we speak, the number increases slowly, but you know, this is what we see. Technologies and reported human experience. The 2 leaders here are the Tendyne and the Intrepid, followed by the Neovasc Chara. So let us talk about the devices. The Tendyne device is a transapical device with a valve tethered to the apex. It does have adjustable tension that provides valve stability, and the valve is fully retrievable and repositionable. I particularly like this image where you can see the interaction of the valve on the bottom of the left atrium tethered to the apex and pulling it down into its position. The global experience, 158 patients in the EFS patient distribution, 75 United States, 39 in Europe, and 21 in Australia. You look at this slide, red is bad, green is good. You can see what these valves do. Basically, they eliminate mitral regurgitation significantly from 99 +3 to 99 nanotrace. An excellent result with that particular valve. On a forward-going basis, the Summit trial actually compares surgery versus Tendyne, and the Tendyne MAX study is an evaluation of the use of that valve in the treatment of MR in patients with severe mitral annular calcifications. Intrepid TMVR is Medtronic's approach to a percutaneous valve. It's, for the time being, a transapical approach, and you can see it is basically a double valve with an interior valve and an outer brim that compensates for the motion. Here you see a case example, and you can see basically the brim absorbs the atrial motion so that the interior valve, the circumference of the interior valve is virtually untouched. You can see a very nice result on this one. The global feasibility and US study in 15 patients have been reported by Vinny Bapap. Here you can see the participating sites for the most part in the United States, followed by Europe and then Australia. So 1-year survival, 76.5%, very good result. And basically you can see the same with the percutaneous valve. Mitral regurgitation basically abandoned, and you can see all patients with mild or no MR in the follow-up. The Apollo trial is the US trial that compares TMVR versus mitral valve surgery. The principal investigators, Dave Adams, Marty Leon, and the study chairs, Michael Mack, will see, and that trial is ongoing. Highlife is an interesting valve because it is a 2-step procedure. It adds a transeptal or transapically deployed valve, followed by a ring that kind of ties subannularly the valve into its position. early feasibility experience in 15 patients. This is what we see for the most part, functional MR. And you can see as the results are coming out 30 days, these are the early results of all these trials based on the learning curve and patient selection problem that we're seeing. This is not any different. The first transeptal valves are out, and this is a case, the first transeptal case, very successfully deployed and with a very nice result. The cardio valve TMVR is an Israeli valve, and by definition it must be a good valve because it comes from Israel. Cardio valve follows surgical design adapted for transcatheter use. You can see the surgical standard Edwards Paramount has the same height of the transcatheter solution. Very promising first 5 cases, basically no MR, no or trace PVL, and no outflow obstruction. Deployment time quite good, 30 minutes to 25 minutes. That's very nice. The AHEAD study is on its way. It's a prospective multicenter single-arm pilot clinical study with a total of 30 patients in Europe. Cardiac Q is a study as a transeptal valve. It's been around for a while with various iterations of the valve, starting in 2012 with the first transeptal implant. The valve has been improved, and early learnings led to a program improvement with an optimized procedure. The program status actually is recent. Clinical experience transeptally is encouraging. Continuous focus on transeptal delivery in the future as valve enhancements, lower profile delivery systems, and improved steerability. An interesting transeptally deployed valve is the Caisson valve. Caisson TMVR has a transeptal approach, is repositional and retrievable, has 2 components, an anchor and a valve. And the device has been improved based on the first experiences. It has an optimized anchor foot geometry, and there's an addition of valve retrieval catheter, and it has 3 valve sizes in order to improve and broaden the treatable population. Enrollment, 21 patients, done in the US and Canada, successfully implanted in 17, not implanted in 4, with surgical conversion in 3, and retrieved in 1. The study status enrollment has successfully concluded for Prelude and initiated for the Interlude US study. Multiple implant sizes are available. Chara TMVR, as you know, has been around also for quite some time, and it's a quick. It fits anatomically shape of the native valve. It's a D-shaped valve. Quick and repeatable transapical implantation procedure. Transeptal delivery system is under development. You can see 58 patients treated to date in Belgium, Canada, Germany, Israel, Italy, Switzerland, UK, and US. 20 in Tiara 1, 16 in Tiara 2, and 22 under compassionate use, with the longest follow-up of 4 years. You can see on the lower part the survival rate, 90% since 2014. In 2017, 95%, in Tiara 2, 94%. This is a very interesting solution, Edwards solution of a docking system, Edwards Sapien M3 valve and the M3 dock. Those are the components. On the left side, you see the dock. In the middle, the valve, and then the final implant is the assembly of the valve into the dock. Very interesting. Participating centers in Canada, John Webb, and in the United States, in Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, Evanston, and Rochester. The first 2 cases were a little rocky. As you can see here, trace and mild procedural MR grade, but there were some procedural issues with the caudal ruptures, but the following 8 patients were all done very successfully. As you can see, basically elimination of mitral regurgitation with no procedural events, and this number has increased to 15 as of now. And you can see the first 10 cases reported by John Webb. You can see technical success high, clinical outcomes very, very nice, no obstruction, no hemolysis, and all-cause mortality also 0. However, what's the clinical reality? Many screening failures, Imaging knowledge and skills are obviously critical. Poor left ventricular function in these cases actually are risking poor outcomes. Assessment of LVOT obstruction, then large derivative profiles, in general more than 30 French. Then mitral regurgitation usually eliminated with all of them if they are implanted successfully. Heterogeneous clinical outcomes across the device platforms. And actually, the optimal antiplatelet antithrombotic therapy is still uncertain. Lingering questions: what is the addressable patient population for a replacement, primary versus secondary MR risk profile? How can we overcome the challenges in patient and device selection, futile versus high risk, appropriate imaging for anatomical screening and procedural guidance? What skill sets are required to perform transcatheter mitral valve interventions, training requirements, role of the heart team? What type of clinical trial design for regulatory approval? What will be the impact of COAPT, ReShape, trials on the approval process of other TCMV therapies? What can we learn from these ongoing and finished trials? Should referral patterns and patient selection criteria be different for centers of excellence? By what standards do we define centers of excellence? Will the future market be dominated by repair or replacement or combination repair techniques? And finally, predictions about adoption rates, reimbursement strategies are widely unknown. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and thank you again, Rox, for having me here.